Hello everyone, welcome to third ECMWF webinar about our new model cycle 49R1. This webinar will be focused on the changes that affect users, so what new parameters are, how to get the test data and how to deal with it. Today we have Emma Piddock, our data policy and partnerships coordinator, and Paul Dando, senior user support analyst, that will explain the data to you. This webinar will be recorded and it will be made available on our implementation page, on this webinar page, and on our YouTube channel. And with this short introduction, I give floor to Emma.
Okay. Good afternoon, or good morning, or good evening, depending on where you are. Thank you all for joining. And as Milana said, this is the third of 3 webinars. If you haven't seen the first 2, I encourage you to go and have a look. They are on the 49R1 page. We're going to talk a bit more in depth about the Reforecast and accessing the test data. And it's very, very, very important that you do test, because the cycle implementations are not optional. So on the implementation day, every user will be using the new cycle 49R1. So this is just to say that it's very, very important. So jumping straight into a bit about the cycle information. So this is not how to access it, it's just about the cycle itself. One of the steps we're taking with 49R1 is to harmonize currently the high-res model, so that's the 10-day model, with the ensemble control. And this is a multi-year step. So at the moment, with cycle 48R1, the ensemble members and the high-res have the same horizontal resolution, but they're not quite identical. The high-res now plays a similar role to the control forecast, but they are still 2 separate unperturbed runs with different outputs. The high-res 0 and 12 are 10 days long, and by comparison, the ensemble control is 15 days long for the 0 and the 12, and the 6 and 18 runs are slightly shorter for both. And the high-res is disseminated earlier than the full ensemble. From cycle 49R1, which we're planning for November 24 this year, both the ensemble control and the high-res will be computationally identical. The other change we're making is that the so-called high-res will be run to 15 days for the 0 and 12, so it will now match the ensemble control, so they will be the same. And we will extend the high-res 6 and 18 runs to 6 days to match what is currently in the ensemble. But the high-res will still be delivered earlier than the ensemble for 49R1. Next year, we have cycle 50R1, where the ENS control, and some of you may know this as stream info type CF, this will be stopped. And the data stream currently high-res, which is OPER, or OPER, will become the control run. At the moment, the plan is that this control run will be available on the same schedule as the current high-res, and that will be earlier than the ensemble forecasts. So this is the plan for now. But as part of the harmonization, we're also going to update the naming slightly. So high-res or high-resolution forecast will now be renamed from this cycle. So we will now refer to the high-res, as much as I can possibly remember in this seminar. It will be called Control Forecast X HRES, or Control as the short version. The other renaming is that the ENS extended, or the extended range forecast, which is the 46-day forecast, will now be called the sub-seasonal forecast. So if you see these new acronyms, IFS CF, this is the control forecast, which used to be the high-res, and sub-seasonal forecast is IFS subs. Okay, so you will start to see this changing on our website. You'll start to see it changing in documentation, the catalog, and things like that. Just please be aware, and if in doubt, you can ask what it used to be called or what it refers to. So we're starting first with parameters that have changed or modified slightly. I'll go through some of these in detail, but not all of them. So this was presented as well by Mathieu, so you can refer to his seminar for a bit more about the meteorological aspects. So the convection, the CAPE and SYN, we actually have new versions of this now, and CAPE and SYN will disappear. Clear air turbulence has been slightly adapted or modified. We have some significant changes in the 2D wave spectra output, which Paul will go through in more detail. We've also changed the sea surface temperature values over land, and this is quite important to take note of. And then for the simulated satellite image products, these still exist. They have changed slightly, and we've introduced a new part of it, which is the visible channel. So that's the image in the bottom left there. And if you're interested, there is actually a newsletter article about this that was published in the summer newsletter, so you can read more about this product. So these are the changes, or the modified, adapted ones, and later we'll talk about some new ones. So this is repetition of Mathieu and I think Andy's presentation. These are the revised parameters for convection. So before cycle 47R3, so a couple of years ago, we had the parameters CAPE and SYN, and these parameters had a parameter ID of 59 and 228001. And these were convective available potential energy and convective inhibition. But from 47R3, we also introduced new parameters called mu-CAPE and mu-SYN, or most unstable convective available potential energy and most unstable convective inhibition. So between 47R3, 48R1, we've been running a kind of hybrid of these options with new parameters, with the final aim to deprecate the original CAPE and SYN parameters. So the really, really important part here is that CAPE, the original parameter 59, will be discontinued, and you should use mu-CAPE instead. Similarly, SYN, or CIN, is also being discontinued, and it will be replaced with mu-SYN. Okay, so these are really important changes, both for your Mars retrievals, but also for your dissemination language. I should highlight that for users receiving their data via ECMWF, via ECPDS, any deprecated or revised, renamed parameters, we've already replaced these in the data requirements, and you can access this in the 49R1 test platform. So if you use the test system, you don't need to make any changes for CAPE or SYN, and on the day of production or the day of cycle implementation, it will automatically move over to production. So all you need to do is evaluate, test, and have a look and check that you're processing these correctly with the parameter ID. For Mars, you will need to switch parameter ID to get these. The other thing to point out is there are also sort of levels, mixed layer parameters for CAPE and SYN at 50 and 100 hectopascal. So you can use these, and they will be installable in the requirements very soon. And now Paul will take over and talk a bit about the waves.
Yeah, so thank you, Emma. So as Emma said right at the start, we've had quite a few big changes to the wave model, and one of them is that we have changed the horizontal grid on which we run the wave model, and now we'll be running it on the same grid as the atmospheric model in both the ENS ensemble, the medium range ensemble, and also in the subseasonal range ensemble. So what this means is, rather than running as now on this 14-kilometer reduced latitude longitude grid, we'll be increasing the resolution to and using instead the 9-kilometer octahedral 1280 reduced Gaussian grid, which is the reduced Gaussian grid which corresponds, of course, to the atmosphere model, which we run at the TCO 1279. So we sometimes refer to this as the TCO 1279 grid. Similarly, for the subseasonal, we'll be increasing the resolution and changing the grid from the 56-kilometer reduced lat long grid to the approximately 36-kilometer 0320 octahedral reduced Gaussian grid. Again, you'll sometimes see this referred to as the TCO 319 grid. This has been done because this also helps us with the coupling of the wave model data with the atmosphere. It means we don't have to actually interpolate the data anymore because it's going to be actually on the same grid. Now, at the moment, users, you'll be getting the data probably on the 0.125 by 0.125 grid if you're getting the ENS wave data. We're really trying to encourage you to request that data instead on a 0.1 degree by 0.1 degree regular lat long grid, or alternatively on the native TCO, and by that I mean the octahedral, the 01280 or the 0320 grid instead. Just to note that you can get sub-areas now of the octahedral reduced Gaussian grid when both in dissemination and if you request the data from Mars. So if you do use the ENS wave data, what we'd like you to do is to test getting the data at 0.1 by 0.1 degree and check that your processing works with it, and then consider updating to using that resolution instead of the 0.125 by 0.125. Next slide. Now, along with this change to the grid, there's going to be a potential impact on the ENS wavegrams. Now, the point here is that because we've changed the horizontal resolution of the model, the wave model, the ENS wavegrams, which provide you with information on the parameters at a nearest grid point to a coordinate that you have entered, this nearest grid point is likely to have changed. And because of that, what you may find is that some grid points which were land points and are land points currently in the IFS cycle 48R1 data, at cycle 49R1, they may now be C points and vice versa. So what you may find out is that what you had as a C point close to the coast at currently at 48R1 is now on the land, and you will find that some of the parameters just do not show, and some of the parameters in the plot that you see there on the right, you'll just get a nice straight line. Now, the improved wave model resolution will give a better representation of the wave data near to the coast, so the wavegrams should be better for near coast points. But what anyone using the wavegrams will need to do is to review and, if necessary, update the coordinates they use for the station locations and check that your point that you've selected is still a C point, so you actually do get a wavegram showing some wave data. Next slide, please. We're also making a change to the output of the two-dimensional wave spectra. So this is the 2FD, was it 2FD2 parameter, which comes with currently at cycle 48R1, you have 36 frequencies and 36 directions. What will happen at cycle 49R1 is that we will reduce the number of frequencies output and archived from 36 to 29. So the model will still run with the full 36 frequencies and 36 directions, but we will only output 29 of the frequencies. And these will be the lowest 29 frequencies. So this will happen in the medium range ensemble because we don't output the wave spectra in the sub-seasonal or what was formerly the extended range. So this is only impacting people taking the medium range ensemble, and both actually now what is now going to be the new control or the medium range with the perturbed members. So the number of frequencies will be reduced. So this is also going to have an impact for you. And if you move to the next slide, please, Emma. So if it's in getting the data in dissemination, we will automatically adjust the frequencies in your data requirements in the test dissemination system. And Emma is going to talk about the test dissemination system in a bit more detail later. If instead you get the 2D FD parameter in Mars, of course, you're going to need to do this job yourself, and you're going to actually have to change your Mars retrieval script to request frequencies only to 29. So instead of getting 1 to 36, as you see in the retrieval on the left there for XPER1, if you're using the test data at XPER79, you will need to change the frequency, maximum frequency to 29. I just added a note there that, of course, on implementation of IFS cycle 49R1, that data will then be archived at XPER1. So in XPER1, you will see a discontinuity. The day before implementation, the XPER1 will have 1 to 36 frequencies. After implementation, and on the day of implementation, it will only have 1 to 29 frequencies. Next page, please, Emma. We've also made some changes to the sea surface temperature values over the land. Now, as you're probably aware, those of you who get the sea surface temperature over land in the forecast fields, the values over land are set to a constant value of 273.16 Kelvin, or effectively 0 degrees Celsius. What we've found is that we've had some instabilities in our data assimilation in the 4D VAR, and this has been traced back to this constant value, causing problems with some interpolation, particularly over the tropics. So the solution which is being proposed is to replace this constant value of 273.16 with the values of the lake mixed layer temperature of forecast step 0. So this lake mixed layer temperature is our best estimate for water temperature over all points. So we're using that over land, and you can see in the two figures there, you go from something where you have constant values over land to something which has values which vary over land. I think there's a big improvement here for users who do get the SST data, in that if you have this data interpolated onto a regular grid from the reduced octahedral grid, reduced Gaussian octahedral grid, you're not going to be polluting the values close to the coast with these constant values from the land. So in a way, this should be a better product. But if you are using these constant values over land to identify the land points, you're going to need to change your scripts and your processing to do something else. We can help you with that. We intend to provide some Jupyter notebooks showing you how to either go back to have the land points or how to identify which are the land points by using the land sea mask. But that's something that people who are using the SST need to be aware of. It's quite a big change. And as I say, if you use these constant values to identify land points, you're going to need to change your processing, because that will no longer work. And I think with that, I go on to the next slide to just mention some of the other new parameters. This is not an extensive list. I mean, Emma mentioned we also have some new simulated satellite parameters which are not listed here. But basically, this breaks down into two different sets. Those parameters with param ID starting 26. These are the new human thermal comfort index products and the products we need to support that. These are not yet being produced. They're not yet available. We're still actually finalizing how they should be produced and how we'll provide these. But just to say that they will be made available through dissemination, and they will be archived in Mars, and you'll be able to retrieve them from Mars. And we're hoping to be able to make those available quite soon now. The bottom four parameters, those starting with a param ID starting 1.4, these are new parameters for the wave model. The time domain maximum and individual crest and wave height, and the space-time maximum individual crest and wave height. These are already being produced. They're available in Mars, and you can request them in the test dissemination. And with that, I think I'm done for now, and I'm handing back to Emma to try to tell you all about the changes to the reforecasts.
Okay, I get the spicy slides. Okay, so one of the biggest announcements for Cycle 49R1 is that we will introduce a new reforecast configuration for both medium range and the subseasonal. So for reference, a reforecast, or sometimes called a hindcast, is a retrospective ensemble forecast for the past years. And in the current cycle, 48R1, the subseasonal reforecast is 10 perturbed members and 1 control forecast, and it's provided every Monday and Thursday, and it shows 20 years. The medium range in 48R1 is similar, 10 perturbed and 1 control every Monday and Thursday for the last 20 years. So you will have had these every Monday and Thursday. Some of you may have chosen just to have Mondays or just Thursdays. But in Cycle 49R1, we've made a significant change. The subseasonal forecast, it remains the same in terms of the number of perturbed and control members. But for the subseasonal, we will produce a reforecast on every odd day of the month. So 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and so on. And that's represented by the blue boxes on this kind of calendar at the bottom. Obviously, if the month doesn't have 31 days, there won't be a 31. It will stop at 29. But if there's a month of 31, you'll get 31. We will not produce the 29th of February on a leap year. Okay, so that won't happen. For the medium range, again, it's the same configuration, 10 perturbed and 1 control forecast, but this is every other odd day of the month. So 1, 5, 9, 13, it's every 4 days. Again, excluding the 29th of February. So this is the red boxes in this diagram on this slide. So with this information, how do you build a model climate? And I'm going to start with the sub-seasonal because I think it's the simplest to talk about. And the first key point is that data will be disseminated sufficiently far enough ahead for you to build a model climate with this configuration. And this is actually a key change compared to 48R1, where we didn't quite disseminate exactly the same as we were using. So users were receiving, I think, one short of what was potentially needed. So this time you'll get exactly the same as we use. For sub-seasonal reforecasts, a model climate is built from 5 reforecasts. And that is one central, in the concept of an odd date in this diagram, it is central. So on the 15th of the month, you centralize it on the reforecast for the 15th of the month. You then use 2 reforecasts from behind and 2 from ahead. So you can see from the red dashed line that the model climate is on the lower row of dates. That would be what you build your model climate from for the forecast date. So this is for odd days. But then what do you do on an even day because you don't have a reforecast? It's quite simple. For the sub-seasonal, you use the reforecast from the one behind. So in this case, once you move forward onto the even day, you still use the reforecast built from those 5 there. When you shift to the 17, this would all shift over to the right. So the key summary here is that you can use the same model reforecast for 2 days in a row, except at the end of a 31-day month. Okay. The really nice thing about this setup is that the brilliant Milana is making us Jupyter notebooks so that we can help explain this to you. You'll be able to see how we process it, both from Mars and from dissemination. And once we finish this, we'll make it available for you so that you can practice building model climates in the same way that we do, and how to process it. For the medium range, you need a few more. So for the sub-seasonal, you need 5, but for the medium range, a model climate is built from 9 reforecasts. So again, using the 17th of the month as the reference point, for the forecast date of the 17th, you will use 9 reforecasts centered around the 17th. So the reforecast from the 1st, the 5th, the 9th, the 13th, 17th, and so on, all the way through to the 1st of the next month. And again, this is annotated by the red dashed line. And you will have sufficient reforecasts to be able to build this. So I believe at the moment we will be providing them 1 day ahead. So then on even days, and bearing in mind the spacing is different, again, this gets slightly more complicated. On an even day, you can't use a centralized reforecast. So we recommend using the closest reforecast as the central, and then 4 either side. So in summary, you can use the same model reforecast for 4 days in a row, except at the end of a 31-day month or the end of the month. And I've tried to annotate this in a stepwise approach. So going back, this is the 17, this is the 18, then on the 19, it switches 1 more. But then when we get to the 20th, it starts to use the reforecast from the 21st. Okay, because that's the closest reforecast to the 20th. So in summary, I've tried to combine it all into one. So for the dates of the 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th of the month, you will build a reforecast centralized around the 17th. And then for the 20th, 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, it will centralize around the 21st and the reforecasts for either side. Okay. Again, we'll try and turn this into something nice graphically and put it in our documentation so that it supports your use and interpretation of model climates. But it does have changes for how we give the data to you. There are consequences both for Mars and for dissemination, and I'm going to focus on dissemination for a minute. So in terms of installing it, the previous use equals Monday and use equals Thursday, it's been revised. We will still use use equals day of the week, but if you install use equals Monday, you will only get data if that Monday happens to be an odd day. So if Monday is the 1st, you will get data, but if Monday is the 2nd, you will not receive any data for use equals Monday. The other thing to note is that users will now receive all reforecasts. Because of the nature of the 13579 or the 159, now we will send you all reforecasts. And this does mean more data for you. So you need to be prepared. The other aspect is that we will not store the entire range of dates on ECPDS for you to build a model climate. You will need to retrieve these or receive them and download and store them in a rolling pattern so that you have the data on your side to build the model climates. Unfortunately, we can't store all of those reforecasts for that length of time. So you need to keep this in mind. And this has consequences for the testing of the data because you will need to start building a model climate before we do the implementation day. Realistically, you'll need to start building this from about end of September, October onwards to make sure you have a model climate ready for the switchover day. So this is why we stress the importance of testing. Contact us if you have any doubts. We can help you install whatever you need. Obviously, we will have Jupyter notebooks to help guide you with the processing if you need it. But please, if you have any questions, please let us know and we'll try and guide you through it. So in order to obtain the full set of reforecasts, you will need to install each day of the week with the normal use keyword. So it'll be a filter on the day. As I've said, if use equals Monday is specified and Monday is the 1st or the 3rd or the 5th, you will get data. But if Monday is the 2nd, you will not receive anything. So as a consequence, in this excerpt from the requirements editor, you'll see that for a regular hindcast for the sub-seasonal, so just the 6 hourly steps, in order to obtain all of the reforecasts for the month, I've installed use equals Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So you will get all of the data required for that. If you just specify Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you may not, it won't match what we do for a reforecast, basically. It's quite simple for installing for the 6 hourly steps, the reforecast. It gets a little bit more funky when you have the weekly means or the step ranges, let's say. So again, I've put a little excerpt on the right, but it's actually much bigger than that in the end. For the weekly means or standard deviations or FC mean or any of those types, you will also need to include the step range that is relevant for each day. And we recommend that users in their processing match the forecast step range with the reforecast step range. So if it's a Tuesday forecast, the first Monday to Sunday forecast period will be 144 to 312, which means the reforecast lead time to compare also needs to be 144 to 312. The other thing to note between 48R1 and 49R1 is in 48R1, if you installed use equals Monday, you could only start with step equals 0 to 168. We wouldn't let you validate Monday and 96 to 264. But with the new reforecast, you can actually start the week on a completely different day. You could install Tuesday 0 to 168 if you want to have a different rolling week. But I should be clear that we use Monday to Sunday, and if you want to use what we do, then we'll provide you with the examples and the snippets, but otherwise it's quite hard for us to say. So this is another reason why we strongly advise testing, because you will need to go and play around and install as much as possible to make sure you're getting the data that you need to process what you need with sufficient time before the implementation date. Please start testing in August, September if you can, preferably before October. So then we come on to data access and testing, and I think at this point I pass back over to Paul.
Yes, so Emma's just mentioned about how important it is that you do start testing as soon as possible, really, with this, particularly with the reforecast data, and providing us with feedback as well. That's also an important part of it. If we can go to the next slide. So this is what we have currently. The table here is summarizing what the data is available at the moment for the from the eSuite that's running for the test data. As you can see, most of it is now being produced and is available both in Mars and in dissemination. The main exceptions at the moment is that we are not yet fully running the 06, 12 or 18 UTC ensemble or the related wave ensemble that runs along with it. Those are not running. We're hoping to have those running fairly soon. We've made a start now, and so we think the data should become available sometime next week, so week commencing 19th of August. Again, we'll alert people via our page when this happens. The other major thing that is missing at the moment is the ensemble wave post-processed products. These are like the extreme forecast index and the shift of tails, the FI and the SOT. These are not expected to become available until the end of August. EC charts and open charts, we're hoping to have the test data available as a new layer in EC charts. That should also come next week, and along with that, we'll be providing the open charts to go with it. Open data, unfortunately, we will not have available until mid-September. And we've had a few questions also about something here we've labeled TC3 LBC. This is where we produce lateral boundary conditions for the arome model. Mostly we do this for the LACE community. We run this under what's called a time critical option 3 suite. This is not yet available. That's in part because it's actually also tied with the, or at least part of it is tied with the ensemble running at 6, 12 and 18 UTC. But I hope that once we have the ensemble data from 6, 12 and 18 UTC available, we should be able to really start running the TC3 LBC. So that should actually also follow quite soon. I put there early September, but I would hope it might be a little bit earlier than that. But again, we'll inform the users of that data directly once it's available and ask them to start testing their models with the new data. Next slide, please, Emma. Now, how you can get the data as a normal user. Those of you who have access to Mars, you will be able to retrieve the 49R1 data from the Mars archive. It's there as experiment version 79. And it's available for all of the affected streams, such as the OPER, the SCDA, ENFO, etc. The shot at the bottom actually is a clip from our web catalog of Mars, showing you how you can get you would get, say, the forecast data from the OPER stream from EXPER 79. So those are highlighted there. As I said before, on cycle implementation date, cycle 49R1 data will then be archived under EXPER 0001. So it will become EXPER 1. That's our operational experiment version. Also, if you're looking for EXPER data 79 from before June 2024, you may not find it's there. It's only there from when we started actually running our eSuite. So from dates prior to that, it's not available. So the EXPER 79 will only be available for a very short space of time, from probably June through to when we implement in November. You should also be aware, those of you who have access to Mars, some of you have access and can download current data, valid data as we call it, from the Mars archive. You will be able to get that. But if you do not have access to valid data in Mars, you will have to get past data from there. So that particularly impacts those getting hindcast data. Next slide, Emma. If you're a member incorporating state user with access to our Atos HPC system, then you may be running jobs under what we call the time critical framework. If you are running the simple time critical jobs, these are the option 1, we have a set of EC access events which can be used for testing your user scripts with the IFS 49R1 data. These are all events that start with E_MS and then the step to which they're relevant for. We've also got the events there for getting the Reforecast data. So these will be triggered when the Reforecast data are available, both for the medium range and also the subseasonal range. For these events, we will set the environment variable MSJ EXPER to 79 or 0079. And you will be able to use that environment variable in your Mars retrievals to specify that you want to retrieve the IFS Cycle 49R1 test data from Mars. Again, then when you've got your script running, as long as you use this MSJ EXPER environment variable, that will be set to 0001 for the operational data. So when Cycle 49R1 becomes operational, in fact, we will stop launching these eSuite events, and we will only run the operational events. But you can do your testing by subscribing your jobs and your scripts to these eSuite events. If you run suites under options 2 and 3 of the time critical framework, then you'll need to try to test these with the IFS Cycle 49R1 test data. You can either retrieve that from Mars, or we'll be able to make that available for you through the test dissemination system, which Emma will explain to you in the following slides. We will approach particularly option 2 users and ask them to test their suites. We will get in touch with you, and once that data is ready and you can start testing, we'll be in touch with you. Next slide, Emma. Or is it at this point over to you?
I think it's me now.
Yes.
Okay, so accessing the data itself, this will be a repetition of last year for anybody who tested last year, but if you are new, we'll go through it all again. I should note that this applies to users receiving data directly from ECMWF. So if you are licensed by a member state and that member state gives you the data, we won't be able to help you with the test data. Starting with member state and so-called gold and silver users, you all have access to the product requirements editor, and we have a test platform for this, nicknamed TPRED. I've put the link here, but the link is also in the 49R1 documentation, so it's available. Your current production setup has been synchronized with a few adaptations, as we've mentioned, and your user has been synced. And then we have, for those who are familiar with ECPDS, it's usually called DIS. We have an XDIS system. So again, this is a test platform where your settings, your destination, and everything have been synchronized in XDIS. Something that we've done differently this year is that if you had a test set up last year in XDIS, we've actually kept that in the hope that it's exactly the same this year. So you're very lucky if you keep your test system rolling. If you need a new setup, that's fine. Just contact us and we will help create your test environment in XDIS. Your users have also been synchronized, and I remind you that for XDIS, it is, again, it's the TOTP token. It is not a password for ECPDS, and it's your usual password for the product requirements editor. As Paul mentioned, historic data is via Mars, and you access expver 0079 or 79 in your scripts. So if you already have access to Mars, this has been exposed in the archive catalog, and you can start pulling down data. For bronze users, you can have some test data. You just don't have access to the interfaces, so you need to raise a ticket via the ECMWF support portal, and then we will guide you through the process to receive a copy of your test data or a couple of copies. And for basic users, unfortunately, you're not eligible for test data via dissemination, but we recommend using the open data when we have the 49R1 test data set available. Again, we'll provide tools. Milan is making these nice notebooks, so there will be options to train, to learn in interactive ways, which is new for this year. So hopefully this will be sufficient. Going into the TPRED, again, it's bright red. So the operational version is black. This one is red. And the really key part, again, we have this function called ready to migrate. So once you've done your testing and once you have settled on a configuration that you wish to receive on the implementation day or thereabouts, you need to click this button, Ready to Migrate On. Then on the day of production, everything that you have installed here that is ready to migrate will be moved into implementation. So you will immediately roll over with it. If you don't click this, you will still be moved to the new cycle upgrade, but we may have to make some assumptions on your behalf. So we will always do what we can to make sure that we're not going to break production on our side, but we can't guarantee that it won't break on your side if you don't test. The TPRED for the gold and silver users, it has been synchronized with the prod. So you don't, if you're a gold user, you don't have to have us approving your requests. But if you need help, please get in touch. We're currently working on updating, you see this two brackets, these are the snippets. So these are pre-prepared examples of how to install data. And we're currently working on a set to show you how to install the Reforecast. So we'll add some snippets and we'll publicize what those look like, just in case you need help with those. As I said, red banner, you should configure your changes there. Any changes that you make in your production, you also need to make in test. So if you add a parameter to production, you need to add it to test as well if you still want to get it on implementation day. Unfortunately, we don't do a two-way sync before the implementation. We will freeze the requirements. It's usually 1 week, possibly 10 days. We're hoping for a week before the implementation. And this is just for everything to settle down and to make sure that there's no last minute changes. So again, I put it in big red box. Please test as much as you can as soon as possible to make sure that everything functions on the implementation day. And as I mentioned, we won't make assumptions about what you want. So we won't expand out the Reforecast if you haven't done that. All we will make sure is that we don't break our own productions. So please test. This is the test ECPDS. Again, bright red, has all the same functions, has all the same things. The only difference for XDIS and 49R1 is that we're not enabling pre-scheduled delivery. So it'll all be as and when it comes available because it's not always on time. But it won't be pre-schedule or anything like that. The other thing I should highlight for 49R1 is at the moment there's no AIFS, and I don't think we're going to do that. So it won't be an exact clone of your production setup if you receive AIFS via dissemination. And I think that concludes everything we're going to talk about, but we are very open to questions if you have any. That's assuming there aren't any in the chat. And huge thanks to everybody who contributed, in particular Tim and Ivan, who was on holiday, and everybody who answered last minute questions and checked my diagrams. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Emma and Paul. So we've had few questions in the Q&A, but they have all been answered. But looks like there is somebody raised their hand. I will try to give them access to the microphone. I think they have. Stefan, if you can
yes,
unmute yourself.
Yeah, okay. Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes.
Yes, sorry, I didn't have a chance to write my question. I don't know if I can make it just like now.
Yeah, no problem.
Right, thank you. I'm talking from Ueda, New Japan. So my question was like, I didn't understand very well. I wanted to know in the phase of the implementation, it will be like done manually by us, or it will like the sets and will change automatically, like even if we didn't do all the tests?
Well, hopefully you will test. I think we're in touch with you about the testing. On the day of implementation, you will automatically receive products from the new cycle, which is some point in November on a particular day. On that day, if you haven't tested or revised your requirements, maybe things won't work on your side. So that's why we encourage you to put new data into test and test the Reforecast. But otherwise, everything will go through. So if you're receiving the high res out to 10 days, you will still receive the high res out to 10 days on the cycle implementation. The main thing is the Reforecast.
Okay. So the update of Reforecasting will be done like in the implementation days, like not controlled by us.
No, you can do it now, and it can be controlled by you between now and the implementation date. So we can start sending you the new Reforecast as of next week, if you like, so that you can start testing on your side.
Oh, okay.
And then you test throughout August, September, October, and then in November, it's a hard switchover. And we will do the switchover on that day for you with whatever you've put in the test system.
Okay. Only the Reforecast process.
Everything moves over to 49R1, but the Reforecast is the biggest change in configuration for 49R1 in terms of data that you receive.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have two more questions in the Q&A. What delay can we expect from the test data compared to the operational dissemination of the data?
This varies from day to day. Some days it's quite close, so a couple of hours. Some days there might be a day or two lag, and it depends on which data set. So at the moment, I think we're about 36 hours behind between DIS and XDIS. Usually, as we get close to implementation, that gets smaller.
Thank you. And what are users able to acquire all control X high res and ENS data in GRIB2 format?
Unfortunately, if the parameters are already in GRIB2, yes. But in 49R1, it will still be a blend of GRIB1 and GRIB2. So typically the older products or the original products are in GRIB1, and the newer products tend to be in GRIB2. You may be aware that next year, or in on the 50th cycle, we are planning for all parameters to be produced in group 2, and there will be an extensive testing phase for that when we get to that point, but for now it's still a blend.
We have somebody raised hand. I think you can unmute yourself. We did not disable microphones.
Yes, thank you. My name is Eniola from Nigeria. I just want to know if there is a future plan in the at ECMWF to increase the number of ensemble members in the Reforecast, in the ICAST.
Oh, good question. That's actually
Because
not what I
that
know
presently
the answer. I think if Tim's online or if any of the Reforecast experts are online, but if not, I will find an answer and get back to you.
Thank you.
Okay, in case there are other questions, one thing I forgot to highlight is that for this cycle, we ask that users don't use the 4901 test products in their operations or commercially or publicize it as part of a service. This is for testing and evaluation purposes only, not really for production use. Obviously, from implementation day, it's fine. But before then, just for now, we ask that you don't do this.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Tim, yes.
Sorry, yeah, and I was having problems with camera and mic, but anyway, you've got me now. So, yeah, in terms of the reforecast, we've spent several years in planning to change it to the reforecast for this cycle, or the hindcast as you call it. So, and that's been to be honest, quite a big headache to try and sort all that out. And when we changed the reforecast, we have to balance the requirements of operational runs and research and AI runs and so forth. Against the cost of reforecast, which is high. So we've tried to sort of compromise as best we can. And obviously, in an ideal world, you'd have an infinite number of hindcast reforecasts, but we cannot do that because of computer resources. And given we've put a lot of time and effort into this recent changes, I'm not envisaging that the reforecast system will be changed in the foreseeable future. I think it will probably, at a guess, be at least 5 years before we do anything like this again. That said, the IFS and the IFS ensemble are attracting increasing prominence here, so there may be some activity to do with reforecast in conjunction with those, which would be on a much shorter time scale, but that would be a separate system altogether. I think that's the best I can do at this.
That's brilliant, Tim. Thank you. So just for clarity to repeat, not necessarily in the short term. We're not planning to make changes in the short term, possibly in the longer term for the number of members in the reforecast. There's a question in the chat, I think. Are there any developmental plans for new cycles of IFS in terms of new data formats like ZAR instead of Group 2? And should we expect any changes in the near future? I would say not in the near future. We are still sticking to Group 2, and it will be quite hard work to get to Group 2 first. So I think once we've got to Group 2, we can discuss and evaluate. But for now, there won't be ZAR in the near future.
Yes, thank you. There is one raised hand. Dave, you can unmute yourself and ask.
Hi, thank you. This is Dave Reynolds from Stevens, Emma. And hi, and I have a question. And as you know, I'm not a modeler, so my apologies, I'm not going to word it right. But our products, which are the old products, at some point within the last year, we had a conversation about 49, or went back and forth with a ticket. And you said, and I'm sort of paraphrasing, but you said, right now, we don't know what we're going to do about your products because they don't fit into our new plan. But you probably don't have to worry about it till 25 or 26. And I don't expect you to have that off the top of your head, but I've heard you all say today, everything will move to 49R1 in November. And I just want to make sure that that supersedes my understanding, such as it was from earlier.
Okay, I think if I recall, this relates to the packing, the CCSDS packing, where provisionally we had a plan that all users would receive CCSDS packing and that it was a short-term thing for us. At the moment, we have no plans to force everybody to use CCSDS. So you're safe in that respect. and it won't impact you for your cycle upgrade. I think off the top of my head, your data won't be materially impacted in terms of format or processing.
Okay, thank you. That is what you told me. You've always been reliable, but I could have misunderstood. So
okay,
thank you very much.
It will exchange some emails just to double check and give you a test data set so that you know exactly what's coming.
Okay, thank you very much. And sorry for my lack of able to ask it better.
No problem.
Yes, I just want to confirm for everybody else. There was a question, will we provide webinars as PDF files? Yes, we will upload the presentations as PDFs after to the implementation page of the cycle in Confluence. Any more questions?
Yeah, I have a question. I just want to ask if the password of the X disk is same as the disk.
It's the same token, yes. So the TOTP token, you need that, not the password. But it should be the same user, same token. It should work fine.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Any more question in the Q&A? You can ask them in the Q&A or just raise your hand. We have 9 more minutes.
And if you don't have any questions in the next 8 minutes, please raise a ticket on the support portal and we will happily redirect it.
Yes, and stop by the implementation page from time to time because we are updating and adding content. We will soon add content about the reforecasts and how to get the land points from the sea surface temperature in the sea surface temperature fields and some other content. So yeah, follow it. And since there are no more questions, I guess we can conclude this webinar. Thank you very much, Emma and Paul. The recording of this webinar will be available on the implementation page shortly. So thank you very much, everybody, for attending, and see you.
Happy testing.
Yeah, happy testing.
And thank you, everybody, for listening. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.